Today, I'm going to be talking about the real reasons why some Gen Z cannot buy a home. And it's probably not what you think. The truth is, a lot of people that I speak to have never even actually talked to a mortgage broker, and they've convinced themselves that they can't get a mortgage. But you can probably buy if you're willing to do the research, if you're willing to sacrifice, if you're willing to manage your spending. I'm going to go through everything, and I'm probably going to say some things that some people don't like, but hey, that's life. I will be telling you the truth. I will be telling you how mortgages work. And remember, your home may be at risk if you don't keep up the repayments on your mortgage. These videos are not to replace speaking to a qualified professional. They're not tax advice, they're not legal advice, and they're not financial advice. My name is Lindsay, and I'm going to be talking about a topic that I tend to have a lot of conversations with people about, and it's about mortgages. But specifically, it's about people who are telling themselves that they can't get a mortgage, but they've never talked to a mortgage broker. They've looked on TikTok, they've watched the news, and they've convinced themselves that it's not for them. But the media has created a lot of fear. Now, you've probably heard things like you need a huge deposit, you need perfect credit, your parents are going to have to help you. All of those things. Some of them are true, but quite often they're not true. They may not be true for you, which is the important part. So if you're looking for a mortgage, or if you think that you don't qualify for a mortgage, instead of just guessing, you need to speak to a mortgage broker. And this is important because the idea of needing a big deposit or needing perfect credit or a certain salary is somewhat correct. But when you speak to a mortgage broker, especially if you speak to me, you may find that we're able to find a pathway forward for you that you can get a mortgage. Don't guess. So there is a formula that I talk about a lot, and it's called CID: credit, income, deposit. So I'll break it down like this. Your credit. It's not that you need to have perfect credit, but you need to look at your credit. People frequently don't check their credit until something goes wrong or until they're worried about something. So the first thing that you want to think about if you're considering getting a mortgage, if you're a Gen Z and you've told yourself that you can't get a mortgage, the first thing that you want to do is look at your credit. So pull your credit report, get it from checkmyfile.com. It's very helpful that a lot of banks do offer the free credit report service, or they give you a score, but not understanding what your combined report isn't as useful as understanding your combined report, which is why I always recommend checkmyfile.com. The next thing is income. So the C is credit, the I is income. So income, your salary, the money that you make. Believe it or not, if you're taking out a mortgage, you're borrowing 100, 200, 300,000 pounds or more, you need to pay it back. So the lender needs to know that you have an income. Now, your salary may be made up of benefits and maybe other elements, but you do need an income in order to get a mortgage. So your salary, they'll look at benefits, they'll look at if you have investments coming in, if you have maintenance, things like that, but you need an income. So C is credit, I is income, D is deposit. Now, this is what stresses a lot of people out. They're like, if you don't have bank of mom and dad, you're not going to be able to get a mortgage. There are some products out there, and I'll be talking about them a little bit later. There are some products out there that you can pay a small deposit. 5,000, 7,000 pounds. Now, these products are designed for a particular type of person, a particular profile. Usually, you're going to need a UK passport, but they do exist. So before you rule yourself out, make sure you're looking at your credit, your income, and your deposit. These are going to be the key factors that any lender is going to look at in order to assess your mortgage worthiness. Most people eliminate themselves. I had to pause on that one, but most people do eliminate themselves. So one of the biggest things that, or the reasons why Gen Z don't think that they can borrow is because they've never spoken to a broker. They've talked to friends and family, they've watched the news, they've listened to these things that are out there, but they've never actually talked to a broker themselves. You can't be approved for a mortgage that you've never applied for. So, in short, if you've never applied for a mortgage or spoken to a mortgage broker who understands your individual circumstances, you can't say that you don't qualify for a mortgage because a professional hasn't told you that. You may have credit issues. You may not think you have enough for the deposit. You may also feel that your income is not enough. But speak to a mortgage broker. Granted, some mortgage brokers don't want a mortgage now, me, who prefer to speak to someone when they're thinking about getting a mortgage or preparing themselves for a mortgage. Because if you talk to them early enough, they can give you the guidelines on what you need to follow in order to put yourself in a situation where you are ready to get the best mortgage that you qualify for. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is every lender is different. And I'll say this now, don't go directly to your bank, especially if you're a first time buyer. The reason why I say that is because every lender is different. Each lender is going to assess your income differently, your credit. They're going to assess your deposits and where you can get the deposit from differently. So when you go to a mortgage broker, they will be able to match you with the best lender for you. If you go to your bank, the bank might say no, and then you'll feel that you can't get a mortgage. The bank might say yes and then not be able to lend you as much as you would like or as much as you need. So the best thing to do is to go to a mortgage broker, give them your specifics, explain your situation, that they can find the best lender for you. Stop comparing yourself to social media. See it and I hear it all the time. Someone's looked on TikTok and someone has made one of these provocative thumbnails and they've looked at that, and usually it's doom and gloom. So the bank is ripping you off, generation rent, all these things that will play to your emotion. So you've looked at that and you've decided you can't get a mortgage. Or you've looked at that and someone has said how easy it is to get a mortgage, and you're comparing yourself to that person. You don't know their income. You don't know what their deposit was. You don't know anything about them except that they want you to click on that thumbnail. So don't compare yourself to anybody else. If you're trying to get a mortgage, make sure that you are comparing yourself to you, to your profile, instead of comparing yourself to what you see on the internet. What should you do next? If you're thinking about it or you've decided that maybe I'm going to give this a try. I watched the video that Anthony put together and I said, let me give this a try. What do I have to lose? What do you do next? Let's just go through the steps. The first thing that you want to do is check your credit. Then start saving consistently. Avoid unnecessary debt. Build your deposit. Speak to a mortgage broker, because preparation is going to give you more options. If you don't prepare, what you will find is you might do it the wrong way around, which is you go, you find a house, you fall in love with it, and then you decide that you want to know how much you can actually borrow. A lot of my clients come to me because they've found a house, and when they're going to make the offer, which is the first part of actually moving towards owning the home, the estate agent tells them that they need an agreement in principle. In fact, some agents will require that you have an agreement in principle before you even book the viewing. And you may say, well, why would they do that? Well, they want to make sure that they're not wasting their time. They want to make sure that you can actually afford the property before you waste their time, go do the viewing, make an offer, and then realize that you can't actually afford it. So the correct way to do it is to speak to a mortgage broker, find out how much you qualify for, and from there find something within your budget. And a quick tip, if you speak to an estate agent, and let's just say you say my budget is between 470 and 500, what house price do you think they're actually going to show you? Yeah, 500. Most people don't buy at the bottom of their budget. So if you tell an estate agent your budget is 470 to 500, they're probably going to show you houses at 510, 520, 530. And this is because if you can actually afford a house that's 500,000, you're probably not going to buy a house for 470. So understand what your budget is. Be firm with the estate agent, because the estate agent, they're doing their job, and their job is to get you to spend as much money on the house that their client is selling. So they're going to try to get you to spend as much money as possible. You are not the estate agent's client. The estate agent works for the seller. So when you buy your house and you're looking to sell it, you're going to want an estate agent that is going to get the seller to spend as much money as possible. But this is important because when you find the home that you want, if your broker offers a negotiation service, it's worth taking them up on it, because if they're like me, I negotiate every day. So what I'm able to do is, in the negotiation process, I can find out things that might be concerning about the property. So the correct order to go in when you're looking for a home is to speak to a mortgage broker, get an agreement in principle, then go and find a property within your budget. Then you can do the negotiation. But you don't want to do it the other way around. So if you're looking to buy within the next 6 to 12 to 24 months, go and speak to a mortgage broker. The biggest takeaway from this should be, don't let social media guide your belief on whether or not you can get a mortgage. If you're not sure where you stand, you need to speak to someone that can tell you where you can look based on your budget and also what your budget is. And I think maybe if we're completely honest, probably it may be the reason why people don't want to talk to a mortgage broker is because they're going to get that answer. It's a lot easier to just assume that you can't get a mortgage than you can run around saying how unfair the world is, and it's not fair that your parents and grandparents could buy a house off a small site. It's easier to complain. It's easier to be the victim than to actually speak to someone and have a blueprint on how you get from where you are to where you want to be. It's very rare that I do a consultation with someone and they just simply cannot get a mortgage. It may be that they need to compromise. Maybe the home that you buy as your starter home, it may be a little bit smaller than you originally intended. It may be a little bit further out if you're in London. It may be in a zone 3 or zone 4, but you can get yourself on the property ladder. And if you speak to a mortgage broker, they will give you a step-by-step on how to get from where you are to where you want to be to get the mortgage, that eventually you can get into a home of your own, you can build equity in it, and then you can maybe upscale at some point in the future. But getting yourself on the property ladder is going to be a key thing for you, because the equity that you can build in that property is what you can use as your career progresses and as your income increases to get that next property, and then maybe you end up getting that family home. Don't leave your mortgage to chance. The biggest mistake isn't being declined, it's just not even trying. It's not even applying for a mortgage. And if you're speaking to a mortgage broker, don't worry about a credit check, because this is how I work. I'm not saying every broker works like this, but what I will do is I will get the documents from you, and I'll also ask you to produce your Check My File credit report. When you produce your Check My File credit report, it's going to tell me, if you've had any late payments, missed payments, CCJs, defaults, anything like that. I'll go through that with you. I worked in collections for over a decade. I understand credit reports inside out, and I'll give you that support. But that means you're not getting a credit check. When you pull your Check My File credit report, it means that we'll have that. We can then look at lenders' criteria. I'm going to let you in on a secret, which isn't actually a secret. Brokers have access to tools that they can check lender criteria before they even do an application. I'll say that again. We can check the lender criteria before we do an application. We can also check the affordability, which means we don't need to run an application in order to see what you qualify for, as long as we have your credit report. And this is really important, because if you go to a mortgage broker and your mortgage broker just says, I'm going to do an agreement in principle for you, they haven't checked your visa status, they haven't checked your credit profile, then you may end up with an agreement in principle, AIP, or decision in principle, DIP, or mortgage in principle, whatever you want to call it. You may end up with something that when you find the house that you want, doesn't convert into an actual mortgage offer. And when you go to a mortgage broker, you're not going to them to get a agreement in principle. You're not even actually going in to them to get a mortgage. You're going to a mortgage broker to buy a home. So anything that is an obstacle between you and getting the keys to that new home is not something that you want to waste your time on. So if you're talking to a mortgage broker, make sure that they're asking you certain questions. It may be off-putting because you might say, look, I just want to know roughly what you can get from me. There's no need to guess. A good mortgage broker will look at the lender criteria and say, well, you've been employed for 3 months, you're still on probation. If you wait another month, we can get you more lenders. They may look at it and say, well, if you tidy up this bit of your credit, you have a default if you wait another 6 months, things of that nature. So these are the benefits of working with a mortgage broker. So when you go directly to your bank and you think you're saving money, maybe you're not actually saving money because you may end up with a mortgage that's more expensive than you actually could qualify for. Or you may end up spending a lot of time doing things that if you had a qualified professional, they'd be able to assist you with. So if you're thinking that you can't get a mortgage because you're a Gen Z and you haven't talked to a mortgage broker, think again, because you may find that you're able to get something. And if you can't get something now, or maybe you're not in a position to get what you want now, they can give you the next steps on how to proceed. So, what do you want to do? Here are the steps to move forward with your mortgage. So, step one, you want to check your credit report. As I said, use Check My File. Step two is to build up your deposit. And with deposit, there's gifted deposits, meaning your parents can help you. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Avoid taking out unnecessary credit and gather your key documents. But let's talk a little bit about deposit. The deposit tends to be something that people are worried about because it's hard to save money. But keep in mind, there are low deposit mortgages out there for first time buyers. They work best if you have really good credit and if you're younger, that way you can do a longer term. But there are products out there. So make sure that you're looking for those products if you're in a situation where you have a good salary, good credit, but you just haven't come up with the deposit yet. As far as gifts from your parents or just gifts in general, remember how you raise your deposit matters. How you raise your deposit is very important because some lenders will not allow gifts from friends. Other lenders will not allow more than a certain percentage of your deposit to be a gift. This is why it's important to find the lender, check the criteria before you proceed with an application. Because as you proceed and they're asking you for bank statements and proof of deposit, don't think that they're only going to ask for 3 months. They may ask for 4 months. I've seen lenders ask for 12 months to determine how the deposit was built up. So doing your research in advance is super important. It will save you time and it will save you disappointment because you'll be able to know what they're looking for. You'll be able to know what lenders will lend. And before you actually start getting tons of credit searches by applying with different lenders, you'll be able to know what the criteria is. So keep in mind, lenders do give brokers access to tools to check the criteria in advance. So 8 out of 10 times when a broker comes back and says, oh, after I got you the agreement in principle, the lender decided that they're not going to lend, 8 out of 10 times, it's because they didn't check the criteria in advance. So if they haven't asked you for pay slips and asked you some other questions to assess who you really are and what your criteria you may need to meet in order to get the mortgage. If they haven't asked you those questions, then maybe they're getting an agreement in principle for you that will not convert into a mortgage offer. These are things that you want to watch out for, but speak to a broker first. My name is Anthony Lindsay, and I do free mortgage capacity reports. So what that means is I'll do an interview with you. I don't charge you for it. I'll look at your situation. I'll check lender criteria. I'll tell you and show you what lenders will lend to you, how much they will lend, what the repayments are, everything that you need in order to be able to qualify for a mortgage and have the confidence that the mortgage that you're getting is something that's affordable to you. So make sure you speak to a broker first. Make sure you get your documents ready, so your pay slips and things of that nature, and listen and ask questions. I see and I feel that sometimes people don't want to ask questions because they feel that, it makes them look dumb, but it doesn't. You're going to be probably purchasing the most expensive thing in your life. So make sure you ask questions. Make sure you're completely clear on everything. If you're unclear, unsure, make sure your broker explains it to you. Same thing with your solicitor. Be prepared, ask questions, know what you're getting, do your research. But all in all, most Gen Zs can get a mortgage. If you can't because you messed up your credit, then that's kind of on you. If you feel that you don't have enough of a deposit because you spend more than you make, or you're always going on vacation, always eating out, again, that's on you. But if you're willing to be disciplined, save, sacrifice, you can get a mortgage, and I can help you get that. My name is Anthony Lindsay, and I make these videos to support first time buyers, portfolio landlords, anybody that's looking to understand how mortgages work. I don't make these videos to replace speaking to a qualified professional. I'm not giving tax advice, legal advice, or financial advice. Instead, I'm explaining how mortgages work. I'm explaining products and terms. So if you've watched this video and you found it useful, it's a really small channel, as you can see. I'd really appreciate if you could not only like, share, and subscribe, but also leave a comment. If there's a topic that you'd like for me to cover off, I'm happy to cover off that topic as well. Just put that in the comments. And also, if you book an appointment, you'll be booking an appointment with me. It's not that I don't have an admin team and a compliance team, but as far as the appointment, you will be having the appointment with me. It won't be a VA or a PA. So book an appointment. We can have a conversation. I don't charge to have the conversation with you or to tell you what you qualify for. I appreciate you watching, and I have a lot of really good videos about different things: joint borrower, sole proprietor. So if you're someone who needs support from your parents and maybe you don't want them on the title, we do have joint borrower, sole proprietor. And if you live in a council property and you are eligible or qualify for the right to buy, I can support you with that. If you have a skilled worker visa and you've been told that you have to be in the UK for a certain period of time, it's probably not correct. I can help you with that. I also help portfolio landlords. As I said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And I appreciate you taking the time to learn more about how mortgages work.